Yeah, and are you streaming at in different locations?
Yes, that is why I'm like making sure that everything is like perfect and things are right.
No worries, man.
Yeah, and are you
If you can
streaming
DM me the link, I can put a link to the live recording. If this is a live thing, I could put it on my story as a swipe up.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. I don't know how to do the link thing, but it will probably go on YouTube or Facebook, and I can get that link over to you.
Okay, yeah. Or tell
Yeah,
me I can get on your YouTube now.
yeah, it's called Shift with CJ,
Okay.
SHIFT, and on my Instagram as well. If you just put the Instagram thing, we're going live on Instagram, so I think maybe that's easier for people to just kind of like jump in on Instagram.
Okay. I'll do that right now. I'm gonna go on your
Yeah, sure.
So how long have you been oh there you go. How long have you been doing this podcast?
Well, I think we're now on our 18th episode.
Oh nice, man.
So
Okay.
it's not that old. It's started earlier this year, and I'm recording one podcast every week. That's the way we're dealing with it, and it's good. It's
Love
nice.
it.
I love it.
Love it.
Awesome. So whenever you're ready, we'll start.
I'm ready, man.
Okay, then. Notice a pattern in our human behavior. Talks to us about something positive, like eating better, moving more, or doing things like that. They are able to grab our attention, but just for a little bit, because then what we tend to do is lose our attention as our left brain gets activated, and we look at this situation kind of judgment. And I hate to break it to you guys, it's unfortunate, but all of us have that biological pattern. And then if the physical characteristics of the person that is putting these ideas in your head doesn't match your idea of a character, then you simply start ignoring the advice. And what happens is, if a person who's telling you to do something different and he's living or he's a live example of what he's preaching, perhaps then everyone starts listening to them even more. So this is why that I can go to extreme distances to find you someone caliber who can teach you about great things that they incorporate in their life. And this search has taken me all the way from Dubai to Florida, where I have found a special person. My guest on the show today is special. He studied political science at the Columbia University. He has a master's degree in science and human from the University of Florida. He has had many roles in his life: an athlete, a student, an influencer, and most importantly, a father. Danny Vega, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother. Thanks, like I said, thanks for your patience with all the stuff that went on in the last 24 hours with my wife traveling. Just the nonsense that people are experiencing nowadays, and it's a sad world we live in. But you just have to live your life as a free human being. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but we don't get caught up in the despair. And luckily, she's home safe now, and we're good. So, thanks for having
touch
me.
wood. Touch wood. It's my pleasure to have you. And while we're on this, are you comfortable sharing with what happened with others? So kind of like they get, everyone puts their masks up and things like that, so we can put out the information.
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife was in Utah for the weekend for a big launch event. My wife is an executive at an athleisure company that's launching in September. It's been a great blessing in our lives, and she had a great weekend, but she was dead tired. At 6 p.m. yesterday, she texted me. She's like, I'm just going to sleep all night. I can't wait to get home. So she flew from Utah to Dallas, and she was supposed to leave Dallas like at 9 and get here like at midnight or something like that. And then the flight was delayed. So she was boarding at 11 p.m. and she had her mask under her nose as she was getting on. Mind you, her bags are checked already. She checked her bags in Utah. So her bags are going to Tampa no matter what. And the captain was actually the person that came up to her and said something like, are you having a hard time putting up your mask? And she said, no. And so they basically kicked her off right there. She called me right there, and she basically had her phone so I could listen to everything. And the woman, no one defended her. No one said anything. And there was a woman right next to her with her mask down under her nose as well. As you know, honestly, no one should be wearing a mask anymore. Like I just was on a podcast. You know, I know you're in Dubai. I was on a podcast with
Mhm.
some guys from Lebanon, and you know, I was joking with them because like you go to Egypt, and like you know, there was a guy who was in Egypt, and he was upset that no one was wearing a mask, and he was a guy from the United States, and he was asking everybody like, why don't you guys have masks on? And the guys, like they're just like, they're like, we're good, brother. They're like, well, God takes care of us, we're good, and he was just like so upset about that and so scared. And it's like, you know, this country, we claim to be this Christian country, and people don't even have faith in God to that they're not going to kill their brother or their sister by breathing on them. And people are waiting for somebody else to tell them that it's okay to breathe oxygen that God gave us, and so we're in this situation because the majority of people you talk to don't want to wear a mask. They think it's ridiculous. And for all of history, the
Mhm.
data is very clear that masks don't work. And all of a sudden that changed last year, and you got to see like the way things has changed in Wikipedia, the way they changed the name of herd immunity from a population, enough of a population contracting a virus and getting that immunity. They changed that to like immunity from by getting the jab. We're not going to say too many things because I don't want you to get kicked off, but
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's a bad situation, and more people need to just say no. And
Mhm.
but they don't. They're so conditioned, and it's a sad world because there are so many lies, like you said, and there's so many things that people just believe. They're too lazy to think about stuff, and so they'd
Mhm.
rather just say, you know what, I don't need to think about this. I'm not an expert. Let me just trust what the experts say. What the experts have been lying to you, and they've been getting things wrong for a very long time. And you can just, when it comes to education, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to healthcare, when it
It's in
comes
our
to
history.
everything.
You can
Yeah.
you can go back in history and check all of those boxes. None of the times, most of the people have been right,
Yeah.
and it's our
Yeah. If
blind
you,
faith in
if
the
when
system.
most of the people agree. Yeah. I think it was Mark Twain that said something like, if you agree with most people, then you're probably wrong.
I like that. Okay, so I'm glad is back home, and sorry for all the trouble that the airline or the crew they cost you. And yeah, this also reminds me of this year. I've been fortunate enough to travel, and I went to Zanzibar in which is in Tanzania,
Wow.
Africa,
Yeah.
in February.
Yeah.
And as soon as I the aircraft, like I had my mask on, right? Because we were all wearing masks all the time. And I get off the aircraft
Yeah.
and I get it into like the airport, like the pickup area where you have all these people waiting for the boards and stuff. And none of them were wearing masks. So I had my GoPro on because I was trying to shoot it. And I was like, wait, am I seeing wrong through my GoPro? But no one was wearing masks. And all the time that I was in Zanzibar, I think I was there for 5 days, like literally their government just told them that, hey, this thing, we're stronger than this, and this doesn't really won't mess
Wow.
around with us, so let's not wear it. Fast forward 2 months, 2 or 3 months, I went to Ukraine last month, and same thing, man. If you're in the
I
mall or
believe
something
it.
where you have like a crowd of people, you probably have to wear a mask, but anywhere else, like there were no masks in the gym, and like it was very chilled out. It was a breath of fresh air to get out and see world as normal. So I can't wait till more people start realizing this, and I think there will be more people that will wake up to this. When, I'm not sure, but hopefully soon. But
Well, I
anyway,
hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I'll,
yeah.
I'll say one more thing is that, like, I think everyone who's listening to this, wherever you are in the world, especially if you're in the West, you need to start questioning everything that they tell you about who you should hate and what country we shouldn't hate and what people we should hate. Because what they don't like is who we hate. So we're supposed to hate all these countries who haven't done anything wrong. We're supposed to hate Syria. We're supposed to hate a guy who was a children's doctor. They're trying to make him out to be a criminal, saying that he gassed his own people and he did all that when I have no evidence of that. Anyways, I don't want to get too political, but it's just question what you're told, because
Mhm.
at this point I'm at the point where I'm just like, if they're telling me to not like something or to not look into something, I'm going to look into it because there's probably something there.
So you've always been into nutrition and fitness, even when you were a kid. Am I correct?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
Even
you
when I was a little kid.
wanted to be a strong
Yeah,
man when you
yeah.
were a kid. Okay.
Yeah, I always tell that story when I was like, 5 years old. I have a little paper that it says like, my name is Danny. My favorite color is this. And it said, when I grow up, I said I wanted to be a strong man. I didn't know what a strong man was, like actual strongman competition. I just wanted to be a strong man. And
Uh,
that's all. I loved it since I was a little kid. Yeah.
I think most of us get that feeling when we're like above 10, 12, and some hormones are changing and you look at the strong guys and you're like, I want to be strong at that guy. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
glad you had it pretty early. But
Yeah.
what my question to you is like, what is your definition of fitness? Because we
Yeah, that's good.
have the world is in different camps right now. So you've got like strength, you've got bodybuilding, you have CrossFit, and much more. So what does fitness look like to you, or what's your understanding of fitness?
Yeah, so like yesterday I was with someone who's he's 17 years old. He's like 6'1.5". The guy's gonna be really, really tall, and he's a rower. He competes in crew. And I'm telling him what I at 40 years old would have liked to know at that age, because he's at such a young age, and there's all these different, you're getting information from all these different directions, and you don't know who to believe. It's just we have a different problem than before, where before it's hard to find anything. Now you have too much information. You have to figure out what's real, what's not real. And I think that, fitness has to be, whether it's a skill in a specific, because there are several sports and several activities that involve a lot of skill. And I think that's important. Obviously you can't be good at your sport if you don't have the skill. You have to develop the skill. But there's also another factor that's very important, is you need to have functional strength, and you need to consider everything, and consider that your body moves as a kinetic chain, and it's not just muscles. You can't look at it that way. And so I say that because I've done a lot of different things. I played college football. I was a sprinter. I competed in indoor rowing. I've done capoeira. I've done Muay Thai. I've done jujitsu. I've done a lot of different things. CrossFit.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
Check you
there's
out.
lots. I love to do a lot of these different things, and a lot of them are very different from each other. But what you find is, if you, I think fitness needs to have a component of athleticism, to where you're able to move in different directions. You're not just stuck in the sagittal plane, which the sagittal plane is just this way. So anything that you do in the weight room, unless it's like a functional movement, is going to be in the sagittal plane. Squat, bench, deadlifts, sagittal plane. But moving in the frontal plane, moving in the transverse plane, being able to have good hip mobility, good knee mobility, having a spine that can move, independently, and my spine, for example, I'm working on my knee mobility right now, my ankle mobility, my hip mobility, because of all those years of deadlifting, 700 pounds, and squatting all this weight in powerlifting. And so I think fitness, you need to have strength. And so at some point or another, there needs to be some sort of resistance training. Now, resistance training doesn't have to involve weights. You can do body weight stuff. You can do pull-ups, squats, deadlifts, or pull-ups, squats, push-ups, all that stuff.
Mhm.
But you need to have a component where you're building muscle, because that's what's going to strengthen your bones. That's what's going to give you the most bang for your buck from a hormonal level. And then you need to have mobility, and it needs to be mobility that's not dependent on an external factor. So like, if you're doing static stretching where you're using something to pull yourself into position, that's good and everything, but you need to be able to go through the range of motion dynamically. And really, if you're competing in something, there needs to be a level of specificity. So I think, having the ability to check all those boxes: mobility, athleticism, strength. And then of course you need to also be really considering like your longevity and your health. That has to be a component. Get to the higher levels of skill in a specific sport, the more and more specialized you get, the less it's going to be about overall health and longevity, because you sacrifice that with certain things like high level powerlifters, high level strongman, high level gymnastics, high level cheerleaders. You can have really
Interesting.
bad concussions and things like that. So, but that being said, there's going to be sacrifice of health sometimes, but you have to have a way to minimize the damage that's done. And then you need to be able to take care of yourself and realize that there's a life that comes after the sport, and you need to change with the time. So like my buddy Ben Pekulski says, like when you're 20, you train with your balls, and when you're 40, you train with your brain. Uh, and it makes sense, like I would love for more people to train with their brain at 20. You might sacrifice the gains a short-term level in some cases, but over time you're going to be better off to have you should be able to be an athlete in your 50s and 60s. You should be able to still sprint and jump and do things like that, and not just hang up your cleats and say I'm done, it's time to play shuffleboard. You need to be able to play,
Yeah.
to be that's a measurement that we don't look at for health and longevity, and we should.
Because I think one of the other reasons is because our environment, or things that get sold on and things like that, are just like, hey, you have to go to the gym and just lift some weights, and then if you don't if you do these other things, you'll lose your gains, bro, and things like that. But i
Yeah.
i love that you mentioned the part about longevity, because lifting, I've been doing CrossFit for some time. I've never done powerlifting, but tried to do max deadlifts, bench press, squats.
Yeah, there's a
And
strength
yes,
component.
it does take away a lot from you, because you want to increase your conditioning, you want to increase your fitness, you want to increase your stamina, and all of these things aren't really natural, right? When you look at our ancestors, they
Yeah.
weren't really all these weights and like running around. They were just low level physical activity, spread
Yeah.
throughout the day, just chilling and walking. You see all the blue zones, and you see all these people who were sanitarians and living over 100, and none of them go to the gym. But what they do is like, move around all day. And yeah, there's another component to that as well, of what you eat, because often what I find is a lot of people will train so they can get away with shitty food, and they just train to eat. And we know that you can never out train that, like you can never out eat a training or things like that. So this brings me to my next question: what kind of a diet are you on? Because we know that food and nutrition is another big pillar which a lot of people are missing. But I know that you've advocated for keto for a very long time, but now I see you eat a lot of meat. So tell me about your journey. Are you transitioning into carnivore? Are you already carnivore now? What's up?
Yeah, I was only on a ketogenic diet from 2016 to 2017 August, and in August I was a pretty early adopter of the carnivore diet. It just so many things happened at the same time. We had the Ketogenic Athlete podcast. My co-host said, "Hey." He had just had Amber O'Hearn on his podcast, and she's one of the carnivore OGs, and he also had Dr. Georgia Eid on his podcast, and he's like, you know what? I think I want to just do an experiment where this month all I eat is anything from a cow and salmon. So like any cut of beef, any organ from a cow, and then salmon. And I was like, you know what? I want to try that with you. And we tried it. And then from August and September on, I was strict carnivore for over a year, until 2018. So like 2017 through 2018, and then I kind of started to like look at different approaches. I always do a lot of experimentation, and I did a ton of experiments throughout those years. Like 2018 and 2019, I did carb ups. I did a period in the summer, and I was doing all these things, and I've learned so much. And now I'm back where I'm at a pretty much most of the time is just mostly just meat, and then I'll have a keto brick at night, which is just my buddy's company. It's like this 1,000 calorie shelf stable fat bomb that it's like MCT powder with cacao butter and a few different things, and it's like 90 grams of fat, 30 grams of protein, and then like 10 carbs. And so I like that, because the only thing that I don't love about, there's a few things that I have to watch out personally with carnivore, is that in the summer I'm a little bit, I have a few mutations that make me a little bit more prone to cramps, and in the summer I have to really be careful with my hydration, and so that's why in the summer it was when I would do my carb ups. This year I've only done one carb up, and it was like 150 grams. I was just feeling beat up. I was doing like 3 different things with training, and I was just beat up, and it felt really good to just do that one day, and I listened to my body. But yeah, the other reason why I do meat and bricks is because I love food. And so like for me to just eat meat, it gets boring. As good as it feels, I also get pleasure from eating food, and eating that keto brick gives me like it scratches that itch for something different. So I could eat, a typical day for me now is pretty much I'll have like a pound of for my first meal, and then like a pound of brisket for my second meal, and then I'll have a keto brick. And so that'll be like right around 30, like 3,000 to 3,500 calories right now. Super
Hmm.
simple. Today is a little bit different. Because of everything that went on, I'm not going to eat until later on, and I'm doing I took out a bison short ribs. So I'm gonna do bison short ribs tonight because my buddy Jake and I, Jake's a pro wrestler. He's really funny. If you guys follow him, real Jake Ager, and we're doing like this 3 week competition where we every week we compete on like who's gonna cook it better. So last week we did
Nice.
ground beef or ground bison. And I think he beat me. I don't know what the results are, but he made like these amazing bison meatball sub, and I made just ground. I made bison burgers. And we're doing short rib tonight. So I keep it pretty simple. I think simple menu, especially if you're trying to lean out, because there's something called
Hmm.
sensory specific satiety. And that is basically, it relies on the monotony effect. When you eat the same thing, your risk of overeating goes way down. It's the reason why animals, you never see an obese animal, because they have a short list of foods that they eat every day. But humans, we have these big old brains. We know how to process food and make it edible, and we can eat all types of variety. And that's when we introduce food science, and we have all these things that make foods hyper palatable, and then it makes us want to eat more. So the simpler you keep it, the less of a stress your diet is going to be on your day. The less you have to think. The more you have to think, the more chance you run of getting decision fatigue. And then sometimes if you're too tight on yourself, and you're following macros that are too restrictive, you always overeat, because your willpower leaves you by the end of the day, and then that's when you'll always make a mistake, when you could have just eaten a little bit more, and you could have stayed within more sensible macros, and then you wouldn't have overeaten.
Hmm. I love that. I love everything that you've said, and it kind of rings a bell for so many things for me. Like I tried the carnivore diet about two and a half. Well, basically, it was in 2019 when we were all stuck at home, and there was not much that we didn't have much time to go out and to buy. It was just like 2 hours per day, 2 to 3 hours, and then I would just run off to the supermarket, and I was like, okay, I'm home, so let me just try out this carnivore diet. I lasted for 2 weeks. I was been doing keto for like 4 years now, and 2 weeks because I wasn't able to source any organ meats, and then I couldn't because of the short supply. Grass-fed meat wasn't really available, and then I'm not like you. Unlike you, I'm not a big fan of cooking, so I was just doing the most basic things. So just getting some steak, just putting some salt and pepper on it, doing a lot of things, and I got bored after some time. But
Yeah,
I also realized that your satiety, like after like towards the evening, I didn't even feel like eating. I was even under calories, and this is one of the other problems that you address it perfectly, and it also comes on the carnivore diet because your satiation from the meat or the protein, let's say, gets so high, and then you don't feel like eating anything.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, if you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to like gain weight, it is a problem because you will eventually be in a deficit. You might
yeah,
have a lot of amino acids circulating in your bloodstream, but you will be at a deficit. And this is what led me to looking into keto bricks. So I was about to travel to US, and that got canceled. And I got in touch with the company saying that, hey, can I find you guys at Whole Foods, or can I just walk in somewhere and get it? And they were like, no, we don't do that, but we can deliver it to you, but it would just take some time. Anyways, I didn't end up going there, but I looked through their website, and wow, flavors that they have are just like, it's already mouth-watering, thinking of it.
yeah,
And that would be a perfect addition to anyone's diet, especially when you're keto and you cannot like, eat enough fat, or when you're in carnivore and then you're lacking some calories, because that 1,000 calories per meal, and it's just delicious as well. It really gives you the motivation, and it adds into your overall calories. And the other thing that you mentioned, sensory specific satiety, right? It's also something that I think I discovered in the last year, because before what would happen is I would eat the same old food, but I would always have like different sauces on it, or like, have some different seasoning. And then it comes to show that, like you mentioned, our mind is always looking for some kind of a novelty or novel experience, whether it be taste, whether it just be going up the road. And that also elevates these neurotransmitters. So you have now more dopamine in the system, and now you want to eat more of it. So, perfectly correct. Like, if you have the same food, I mean, it doesn't have to be boring, but if you have it mostly the same way, chances are you'll stick to your limits and you'll eat the same. Now, here's the big question. And your answer to this I'm sure it will solve a lot of confusion, and it would either make the price of butter and meat go up, because a lot of people might think that being on keto or carnivore, especially in the athletic community, everyone is so centered eating carbs to fuel performance. Now we know that it might be true if you're running a marathon or playing football, but most of the people aren't doing that kind of stuff. They're just going to the gym to get some more muscle mass, look good naked, and they think that eating carbs is probably very important to build muscle. But that, I mean, that whole ideology just goes to fail, because you're extremely muscular in a good way. And I've seen you eat, like, you've just mentioned that you were on carnivore, you were on keto, so you haven't really incorporated much carbs in your life. Tell me, do you need carbs to build muscle?
That really depends, because there's a lot of people that, for me growing up, it was so easy to eat, man. But I will say that, like, I always like to preface this because I'm Cuban. So growing up, my meals, I didn't eat out. We didn't eat out a lot. We didn't have money to
Mhm.
eat out. So, I had rice and black beans with a lot of my meals. That was like a typical Cuban staple: rice and black beans and fried plantains, and like a meat.
Mhm.
But I would say that looking back, I got introduced to a low carb diet back in like 2003, and I was following it even back then. I got introduced to uh, what's it called? Something nutrition, precision nutrition. So
Okay.
the
Yeah.
Canadian guys, John Berardi, the PhD, he's a Dr. John Berardi, really smart guy. They're not very friendly towards keto, but they like low carb. And so
Mhm.
I would say that there were a lot of those years where I was putting on muscle. And even in college, I ate a lot of carbs because I was just like trying to get as big as possible. I would have,
Yeah.
burgers with the buns. I would have, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and all that stuff. But fine. Let's say I didn't build the muscle that I built when I was 225, in 2015, 2016. I was big. But then now when we talk about 2016 until now, like you said, I've had very little carbs and I've gotten older. Now I'm probably not at the most muscle I've ever been, but I would say that there's probably within the last 5 years, I was at the point where I've had the most muscle I've ever had. So the peak of the amount of muscle that I've had has been sometime in the last 5 years while I've been ketogenic, and a lot of that time I wasn't focused on adding muscle, and it was just like I remember the first year. There's a lot of keto people here in Tampa. We have Dom Diagostino, we have Jacob Wilson, we have Ryan Lowry, we have Ben Pekulski now, who's Ben is keto off and on, even though he's a pro bodybuilder. And I saw Jacob at the gym, and I was like, man, I don't understand what's happening here. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do to lose muscle. I'm intermittent fasting. I thought I was supposed to eat 6 times a day. I'm doing distance training now. I ran my first half marathon, in 2016. My protein is lower. What's going on? I thought I was supposed to lose muscle. And it was interesting because I think he told me that that gave him the idea to do a study that they did where they had two groups of advanced power bodybuilders they were both not beginner groups. They put them both on the same amount of protein, which is very important when you do a study like that, to make sure they both have enough protein or the same protein. And they put them both on a deficit, and then they had one group doing strict ketogenic and they had the other group doing cyclical ketogenic, and their version of cyclical was 2 days a week of a carb refeed.
Okay.
Now, I think it maybe we should look at another study, at least one or two studies where they're doing, maybe in the same study, you do a cyclic ketogenic refeed with just one meal and a cyclic ketogenic refeed with just one day. Because what happened in the study that they did was that the people that did, they lost the same amount of weight, both groups. The problem is that the group that was on strict ketogenic lost more body fat, and the group that was cyclical ketogenic lost more lean mass. And so they lost the same amount of weight, but the cyclical group lost some lean mass. And so what they hypothesized from that was that, ketones seem to be anabolic. They have some properties that they act anabolic, and they're very muscle sparing. And so that one group, they'd be out of ketosis. It would take them a few days to get back into ketosis. And so they lost that benefit of the muscle sparing properties of ketones. If you are trying to gain as much muscle as possible, meaning you want to be, be a bodybuilder and eventually be a pro, then you're going to need carbs, because you need, that strong insulin signal. Like, we can rely on mTOR as low carb athletes. We can rely on there is a little bit of insulin, but not nearly as much. And we also rely on growth hormone, or growth hormone is selectively anabolic in the muscle, but insulin is it doesn't care. Insulin's anabolic in every tissue,
Everywhere.
muscle,
Yeah.
fat, so if you're just a typical everyday person and you're used to doing like a bulk, and you've done a bulk like every year, and the last couple of years let's say you've gained 7 kilos on your bulk, and then this time around you only gained 3 kilos. Well, overall, you're not going to have the same total amount of weight, but I would bet that your muscle thickness might be better. The quality of lean mass that you put on might be better. So you can totally gain muscle on a ketogenic approach, but you have to have several things that you consider. And this is why, Ben Pekulski and I created Keto Muscle Intelligence, because we wanted to teach people how to train on a ketogenic diet, because that's another thing that's important. We know from the FASTER study, I think it's 2017, that, once you get fat adapted, you can operate at a much higher intensity, use energy. That's awesome, because if you're like a sugar burner, you probably get to the point where you're 65, 70% of your VO2 max, and then you start drifting towards burning more carbs. Like 50% or more of the energy that you're burning is from sugar. And that's gonna come from, first, it's gonna come from beta oxidation, so taking the triglycerides, turning them into sugar. And that process is a little bit slower than just having sugar available, but we can keep up as long as it's not for too long. Then when it gets to a point where it's an extended, really high intense thing, then you might not be able to keep up with your energy demands by just that. But like you said, most people want to look good naked. Most people are living a way too much of a life where they're way too overfed, and they think they got to slam all these products and they got to do all these things. Wouldn't it be better to take an approach where it's a little bit more sensible? You're going to look better, because you're not going to have these crazy, like, I look the same almost all the time now. Whereas before, I would have, on a carb up day, or when I ate more carbs, my face would look more swollen, my body would look more swollen. Now I look kind of the same all the time, which I love. And I just feel like I have many more benefits than just the muscle. I have more of an engine. I feel better. I have less inflammation. That's another thing that you have to consider if you're having carbs all the time. When I did 2 summers ago, I did 12 weeks in a row of carb ups. And on the days that I would do my carb up, I would do drop sets, and I would do higher volume and less rest. And it was awesome. And I did feel that extra oomph for that higher intensity stuff. But what ended up happening is that my inflammation started creeping up slowly. And so the next week, when it was time to do that carb up again, I was just a little bit more inflamed. And then the next week I was just a little bit. And after 12 weeks, I'm like, gosh, my elbow, my shoulders again. And so, there's people, and this is why there has to be context, because you have a lot of groups and companies that focus on high level athletes. And a lot of them are not doing a ketogenic approach unless the person is either trying to lose weight, trying to heal in the off season, or the person might be retiring and they want to get, take care of their metabolism and get healthy again. But when you are at that really, really high level, a lot of them can't afford to go through the adaptation process that needs to happen, which can take over a year. People say it's like 4 weeks or 3 months. And, I noticed that I wasn't fully adapted. At 3 months, I got my pumps back. I started to see my vascularity again. But then I noticed that after a year, I was at the point where I had to cut my fat because I started to put on a little bit of subcutaneous fat from extra fat that I was consuming. And I think that just was telling me, like, look, my body's able to use the fat that I consume and my body fat more efficiently. And so I cut the fat down after a while, where I used to be closer to 75, 80%. And now I'm close to like 60, 65% fat. And for me, that's like the perfect amount now. I eat a high protein diet. I think protein's the most important thing. We know that, the most important thing is you need to have that leucine signal. And so if you have enough protein, then you're going to gain muscle. Now, if you look at protein versus protein plus carbs, it's very simple. Like, we only see cell cultures. I don't think we have any human studies with that. But like, if you look at just carbs by themselves, they do nothing to gain muscle. But then when you add protein and carbs, it's a huge difference, and it's better than just protein. And anecdotally, we see that protein plus carbs is better than just protein. But if you just do protein and you get enough fat and you eat enough, you're eating enough calories, which for me, everybody listening, divide or multiply your weight in kilograms by 2.2. You get your weight in pounds. So let's say if you're 100 kilos, multiply that by 2.2, that's 220 pounds. And the minimum that you should be eating if you're serious about bulking is multiply your body weight in pounds by 20. So for me, I would start off at about 4,400 calories for putting on muscle. If I had a body weight goal, let's say I'm 225 or 220 and I want to get to 235, I would set my protein to that goal weight, 235 pounds. I would set my carbs to 50 because I want to have maybe a little bit of carbs to help with that. And then the rest would be fat. And I would rely on oils. I would rely on fatty cuts of meat. And, if you're eating a lot and you think, I'm eating so much, I'm not gaining weight, you're not eating enough, period. It's just, you're not. And it's uncomfortable. And for anybody who feels bad, like, man, I can't put on muscle, watch, I think it's called Den of Giants. It's like a 21-minute video by Vice. It's all about strongmen, and it's about specifically about the strongmen of not Finland. No, I think it's Norway. There's a big
Yes.
Yakabol, I think it's called, and everybody, all of them will tell you the hardest part of their job is how much they have to eat. And so if you really see that people that this is what they rely on as their, the way they make money, they are eating. They're eating 10,000 calories a day, 15,000 calories a day. Somebody's
Wow.
20,000 calories a day.
Man, and I'm trying to fit in like 4,000. It already looks like a challenge. And
How
that
many
is,
kilos are you?
I'm 83 now. 83
Okay, yeah, that's
kilos.
a good amount for 4,000. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So,
Nice and
and
healthy.
I think this is this is one of the other things that everyone is facing as well. Because I remember when I was very serious on the ketogenic diet, and I thought all carbs are bad, and carbs is just gonna make me insulin resistant and things like that. This is back 3 years ago, and I was also
Yeah.
doing 24-hour fasts. And with 24-hour fast, I don't know what was up with me at that time. I think I was just being one of those people who were like trying to be hard to kill. So I was doing 24-hour fast. I was doing like 3 hours of like serious competition level CrossFit workouts. I was
Wow.
working out 5 to 6, and I was working out when I was fasted. I was working. I think was even working out 5 days in a week, if I'm not mistaken. But surprisingly, one of the things that happened was I did not lose a lot of muscle mass. I did get
Oh,
shredded.
that's great.
Yeah, and I think one of the other reasons is that, like you mentioned, that you're a fat ketones have a muscle sparing effect. In some, I think I read a study and it says that ketones act very similar to branched chain amino acids. So, like you mentioned, leucine. So there's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So having
And leucine is
that
also
circulating,
ketogenic.
yeah, okay, I didn't know that.
Yep.
So, like, And so, what about when people say that, if you have branch chain amino acids in your fasting window, or like, let's say if you're not even fasting, your ketone levels drop? Is there any truth to that?
Well, like, when you look at ketosis, like the first thing that they say is like, okay, the most important inputs are going to be the amount of carbs that you have, and then second
Hmm.
in importance would be the amount of protein you have, because protein could in some cases be glucogenic, it could be insulinogenic in some places. Leucine doesn't have that issue, and so Dom DiAgostino, this is something I talked to him about years ago, because I was saying, hey, what about, and by the way, it's funny because when we learn something new, we
Hmm.
automatically, it's the whole Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like, that's the only thing that right now. And so you stick with that, and you
Hmm.
haven't seen the full picture yet. And so it's like, we forget that it's like, okay, I'm doing a 24-hour fast, but that's a catabolic input that I'm putting in, and I'm trying to be anabolic. But then at the same time, I know that fasting is good. And so I have to tell people, listen, maybe, at this time, just do 12 hours, get your food in 12 hours. And also be aware of the fact that with muscle protein synthesis, the most important thing is going to be, you're going to have to artificially space out your protein a little bit more. So instead of having like 1 or 2 meals, it's going to be better to have 4 meals, because you're going to have more of those little insulin little pulses from the protein, and spacing out that protein. We will absorb all the protein. So like when they say, you absorb 30 grams at a time, it's not true. You can absorb all the protein. If we didn't, we would die, because our body is going to say, give me whatever I can get, and I'll use whatever I can use. But if we're talking about like optimal muscle protein synthesis, then it's better to space it out. So sorry, I went on a rant. And so
I'll go on.
remind me what the question was, so I could get back to it.
So I was wondering that I know for a fact that if you have glutamine, then
Oh,
it would
yes. Yeah.
reduce
Glutamine
your,
is glucogenic. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
glutamine reduces your ketone levels a bit, but
Yep.
I've also heard similar stories about amino acids. Have you done any experimentation where you've had like branch chain amino acids and tested your ketone levels later?
I haven't. I know people have, but yeah, that's why I brought up Dom, is because I
Yeah.
said, hey, what do you think about this? Because, we heard, Dr. Jason Fung and some other people that are that try to look at all these different fasting things, and they try to say, like, they try to make a range, even though we're going off of averages from studies, when we're going off of, anecdotal data, and they'll say maybe 200 calories or less, provided that none of those calories are carbs, you might be able to just be just fine and keep your insulin low enough. There's a study from 1982 where they had people consuming 44 grams of fat, and nothing happened to insulin. And so insulin is probably the most important factor in maintaining, a level of ketosis. And so
Mhm.
I don't think, now glutamine, like you said, glutamine, if there's glutamine in your BCAAs, which I don't know if glutamine is always included in BCAAs, unless it's like BCAAs, EAAs
Yeah.
together, and glutamine. But glutamine, like you said, it is a little bit of, there is a little, it's a little glucogenic. And so I'll say to someone who wants to take glutamine because maybe they have some gut issues that they're trying to heal, they're trying to strengthen their gut lining. And so I'll say, take your glutamine after your workout. Now, if you're trying to maintain ketosis, I said to him, hey, what if I wanted to extend my fast a little bit longer? Like, let's say I trained at 6 a.m. and I don't want to eat until the afternoon. I was doing that for a period there. And this was like April of 2018,
Mhm.
2017. I had this like goal. I was like, you know what? I want to get down to 6% body fat. I've never gotten to that. And so I did my um, DEXA scans. I was actually doing them here at ASPI, where Jacob Wilson and Ryan do all their research. Amazing facility. And then and I to I was training at 6 and I wasn't eating until 3 p.m. Said in the first couple of weeks there was a nice little decrease in fat, and then it bounced back, and I started to see, like, at my next body fat test, my lean mass had gone down a little bit and my body fat was creeping back up, and I was like, oh no, this is good, this is not good. So I started to eat after my workout again. But I thought, what if I asked Dom, what if I put in some BCAAs? And he's like, I think it's relatively safe, especially even if you're doing an extended fast, because if you're deeper in ketosis, and now you get that little insulin little pulse. It's not going to be anything too crazy, and you could,
Mhm.
hypothetically maintain ketosis while eating those BCA, taking in those BCAAs. Um, but you just got to honestly just try to keep it as simple as possible and just say, what is my main goal? I know that I can't have everything at once. Maybe there is, I think I would argue that it's much more likely that you can do really good recomposition with the keto. You're burning fat and you're gaining muscle, but always has to be a main one. And
Mhm.
so if your main idea is to burn fat, I would try to lean out as much as possible first, because I just noticed that when I lean out and I'm at that point where my skin is really thin, then when I go to put on my muscle again, when I go to do some maintenance, maybe like a month or two first before I go right into getting into a surplus, I noticed that there's a period there where I'll add 200 calories. The next week I'll add another 300 calories. And then I'm like at 1,000 calories more than I was within a month. And I haven't put on any weight yet. And now I'm just filling out and I'm looking awesome. And it's this magical like time period where you're really ripped and you look bigger. And like, I've been there where I've been 10 pounds lighter, and I'll talk to people and be like, man, you put on some muscle. And it's just because your
Mhm.
muscles are popping out more. So, it's something that you can try. The only thing that you can do is you can test blood ketones, but you have to understand that there's a little bit of a delay with that. So I think it's important, if you are going to do that experiment, make sure that nothing else changes. Keep everything exactly the same. Test your blood sugar and your ketones at baseline, so while you're
Mhm.
still fasted. And ideally, if you're going to do it in the morning. So you test your blood sugar and ketones fasted. Go do your workout. Do the typical workout that you do. Realize that your workout is another input, and if you're training, really intense, there is going to be a blood sugar increase from that. So keep that in mind. So maybe you might even do like 3 days of just getting an idea of how much your blood sugar goes up during an intense workout. Then bring in the BCAAs, and then do 3-4 days of testing with that, and see if your ketones go down. And I would actually do, with that experiment, I would do a 30-minute post workout, and then I would do an hour, and then I would do 2 hours,
Mhm.
because your ketones, unlike blood sugar, the effects aren't right away. So your blood sugar could go up pretty quickly, but it'll take hours for your ketones to go down. So I
Yeah.
noticed that too when I've compared breath and blood, and breath is testing, acetone and things like that. So you don't really get one-to-one correlations. People have tried to do it for years. It's really, really hard to do. The data's all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something to try. Definitely something to try.
Well, I will experiment. The thing is, right now I'm more on a cyclical keto approach where I am bringing in some carbs at the end of my training schedule, especially if I'm doing very high intense, high volume training. And that also because I have seen some studies which have shown that carbs by themselves don't have any effects on muscle protein synthesis, as you said. But again, when you have insulin coming into the picture, and when you spike up insulin, and when you have all this glycogen which holds so much of water, I was also reading some. It changes a lot of things, and I was also reading some research from, I think his name was Dr. Jose Antonio, and he
Oh,
mentioned
he's
something
so
about,
prolific.
yeah. So do you know about this thing that I think he's the one who made it famous, called hyperplasia?
Oh yeah, hyperplasia is, yeah, it's the division of the muscle cells, and you increase your muscle cells versus just increasing the size, which is hypertrophy.
Yes, on that concept, when I was looking into it, one of the things that can do that is when you load yourself, or let's say you have at least 1 or 1.5 grams per kg of carbs right after your workout, let's say 30 minutes after your workout, and you stretch these muscles that you've been, and that stretch somehow increases the hyperplasic effect on the muscles itself. So it is the insulin that is coming in, and then you're shuttling in amino acids or proteins which get delivered right to the cells. And at the top of that, because you're now holding so much water, it also has like it has a hypertrophic and a hyperplasic effect. So this is something that I've been experimenting with, and to be honest, I don't have like the stats in terms of weights and stuff, but anecdotally, when I see myself in the mirror, it does seem to work.
Wow,
And
that's
of
awesome.
course,
Did
I'm
he did
also
he
using
did he guess why? Did he try to
well,
like guess why that would uh improve hyperplasia, like, or give you more of a chance of
it's
that?
it's so this was, I read this a while back, but it's mostly happening due to the stretching of the working muscle within a shorter time frame. So when you're stretching muscle, loading yourself with water, and have like, I use creatine, I'll use betaine like TMG. Sometimes some of the recommendations are, some of these things would probably be banned, like glycerol, or even arguably like
Glycerol's
Viagra or
banned.
Cialis. I think so.
Oh
Yeah, in
yeah.
some sports, yes, it's banned. And
Wow,
this idea
glycerol's a
of
great
using
one
like,
for bringing it into the muscle. Yeah,
yeah, I'm trying to source it, to be honest. Over here, I can't find it, but
that's crazy.
yeah,
You
like
can't find
Cialis.
glycerol. Wow.
Yeah, you can. But yeah, probably when I'll travel, I'll get them, and let's try that. And you, because you've been working out for so long, have you done some genetic testing to see, like, do you have any of these favorable genes that increase like the skeletal muscle mass, muscle fibers, muscle size, strength, or something like that?
Yeah, I have a
Are you
few
special?
really cool ones. I have you have some really cool ones. My if anyone wants to listen to it, it's on the Keto Savage podcast. Our friend Anthony J, he's a epigeneticist for the Mayo Clinic. He does um, what do you call it? DNA consulting. He works with pro athletes. If you hear some of the names that he can't really say in public, but the people that he's worked with, it's just unbelievable.
Mhm.
And he read our DNA, both mine and Robert's, and both of us have really good DNA. I have a few more risky DNA things, which I don't even need to get into for the this conversation, but I had the warrior gene, and I forget what that's associated with. I think that's, well, basically one of them. I don't know if the warrior gene is the one that I'm talking about, but one of them is associated with, or the hunter gene. I think it's called the hunter gene, where I basically I'm able to eat more than the typical person. And
All right.
so that gives me an advantage because I can eat a lot more. And one of the ways that people can do that, that with experimentation, would be to look into peptides. I would never touch it because I cannot imagine. I have powerlifting friends that have told me stories that will blow your mind. They take ghrelin.
Uh-huh.
So someone takes ghrelin. If anybody who doesn't know what ghrelin is, it's one of the major hunger hormones, and they take ghrelin, and it's like a black hole. Like they can just eat and eat and eat, and it's like, and anybody who's done a bodybuilding competition will experience that effect without taking ghrelin after the show, especially if you don't do a ketogenic approach, which Robert, Robert Sykes, one of my best friends, he talks about that because his first show, he put on, the year before, he had put on 100 pounds by just eating, and
Wow.
it wasn't the best weight ever, but then he lost 80 pounds doing his show. And so he did, like, he had to, his mind is on a different level, and he had to basically, at the end, he was under eating so much, he was low calories, and like he would have to basically visualize someone putting a gun to his parents' head and saying that they were going to kill his parents if he didn't do this lift right now. And that's where he had to go.
Uh-huh.
And then he put on, I think, like 25 pounds in the first day of his post-show rebound. So he had a terrible rebound, and it was because his ghrelin was so crazy. And I think he told me he did the math once that he had eaten like 20,000 calories like several times. He would go to a restaurant, eat the whole pancake menu, eat everything, and then go somewhere else and eat again. And so there's things you can do to do that, but I mean, I do have, like, my muscle, the way my muscles are built, I'm very much type 2A, and type
Mhm.
2B, so I'm very fast twitch. And so it's funny because you see Robert is very slow twitch, and he was 190 pounds, so pretty heavy. It was in his off season, and someone challenged him to do a marathon, and he did a marathon within a month, and he didn't really train much at all, and he did it. And that's because he's built that way. He could do that. Like, if I did that, I would
Yeah.
die. I had to build up. I had to do 40 miles for my, I wanted to do 40 miles for my 40th birthday. And I trained for that for like 4 to 6 weeks just to get my body ready for it, to get my feet ready, to get my
Hmm.
cardiovascular. So it's good to know your genetics. And I always say, like, this is one of the things that I wish people did, is like find a way to get your child's genetics as early as possible. If you use 23andMe or one of these companies, you don't have to use your real name. I would recommend you don't use your real name, because if you just put a fake name like Mickey Mouse or something, there's really no way that they're going to be able to identify you if they ever wanted to look at your health history, because
Yeah.
it's you always want to take care of that as much as possible. But then you can see, like, for example, my wife, she was, when we did our genetics, she had MTRR, homozygous, and MTHFR, which
Hmm.
MTRR, she doesn't methylate B12 well, and then MTHFR, she doesn't methylate folate. And so she was growing up and she had mental health issues. She was always tired, and she always thought she was lazy. But what if you just gave her methylated B vitamins her whole life? If she would have known that, it's one of those things where, because we need to also pay attention to epigenetics. And like, I remember seeing something where I had very similar genetics to a friend of mine who has all types of health issues in certain
Yeah.
areas. I had the same genetics. Like, I had COMT, homozygous. I can't detox heavy metals. Estrogen will build up quickly in my system. But be a good thing too. Like, if you have high levels of androgens and estrogen too, it's actually good, as long as it's not too high. And so, because of my lifestyle, a lot of those genes were obviously not turned on. And but it would be nice to know, if you do experience that first issue, to know that, that explains it. It's because of this. I have electrical issues with my heart. I have risk for that. I never have felt it, but my dad has it. And creatine, believe it or not, Anthony recommended, which you just reminded me again. I told myself that I was going to get back on creatine, because I have a few clients right now asking about creatine, and I'm like, get on it. I have female clients that I'm
Yep.
putting on creatine. Creatine can help with, if you have electrical issues with your heart. It's actually a great supplement to take, and it's the best supplement available right now for the past 30, 40 years. It has the most research. Jose Antonio has done a bunch of creatine studies. Um, Jose Antonio, by the way, he's very prolific. First person that I really got into, like, back in 2000, I was reading his studies. He did a bunch of stuff on caffeine. For anybody who's interested in
Hmm.
like the effects of caffeine, he's got a lot of good stuff on that.
That's cool. Yeah, he's quite mind blowing, and yeah, creatine, I would also say, is like one of the most researched things. It helps in ADP production, can help in mitochondria. It also is, for me, I've even found it to be a good nootropic, because if you
Yeah,
haven't really
they've done
slept well,
studies on
try
that
it.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
try
I'm
to
I'm getting
use
right
it when
back
you
on it.
haven't
I have a
slept well.
creatine. I'm going to open up that bottle, and you know what's going to happen, right? It's going to be a bunch of clumps of creatine. So I'm going to have to like break it up. But I have creatine I've used creatine on and off since high school. Creatine came out when I
Yeah.
was, I'm 40 years old. I was in the 90s. Creatine was just starting to take off. I remember I was taking a Metrics Mass Action. So it was
Hmm.
creatine with sugar. So it was like a
Yeah.
grape flavor that I would take, and it would have like, maybe like 30, 40 grams of sugar with it. So, I mean, when I talk about anabolic, that was definitely
Yeah.
anabolic, because I was having it with a bunch of protein after. So,
Yeah, it helps shuttle those things back right into the cell really fast. And even now, they
yeah,
say that if you have like a fruit or something that will spike your insulin levels, have creatine with that.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So tell me, how does your training schedule look like? Because I know that you're training twice a day now. Why is
Yeah,
that?
man. I'm doing 75 hard. It's a love hate relationship. Have you heard of 75 hard?
I've heard it on your Instagram. I've seen it on your Instagram. I've seen those checklists, and you're checking every day till 60 days or something, right?
Yeah, if you're dopamine driven like I am, it is the best feeling. I'll tell you that, checking those little boxes. So,
Uh-huh.
Andy Frisella is the CEO oh my gosh, I forget the name of the I don't know a lot of these supplement companies, but he's the CEO of a big company, supplement company, and hopefully I'll remember it but I don't
That's okay.
remember.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, First Form. It's First Form.
First
First
one. Okay.
PHORM. and he has the MFCO podcast. He has a potty mouth. I don't really listen to his podcast. I know my friends are friends with him. I know a lot of people that know him. 2019, he came out with 75 Hard, and it was because he was in a bad place. I remember he was going to hire someone that I know to coach him because he was just in a bad place. He was drinking a lot. He was overweight, and he
Mhm.
decided to do this. And so many people have done this and have had amazing results to the point where it's changed my coaching. I have people. I'm putting people in the first month of coaching on a type of, boot camp style first month where I don't check in with them. I have them check in with me 3 times a week, and I have a specific list of daily tasks for each client that it's not quite 75 hard, but it's specific to them. So if it's someone who, when we do our consult, who tells me that they have a hard time getting to bed in time
Mhm.
or they eat too close to bed, that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to zero in on. I'm going to say, hey, did you wait 2 hours? Did you give 2 hours before you stopped eating and go to bed? Because that's one of your things.
Yeah.
So this program is 75 days, and you have to drink a gallon of water a day. You have to do two 45-minute workouts separated by, I think, 2.5 or 3 hours. One of the workouts has to be outside. You have to follow a diet. So whatever diet you choose, you have to follow it. There's no cheating and there's no alcohol for 75 days. That's good for me. I'm sober for 9 years now. Is it 9 years? What, something like that. And
Congratulations.
then thank you. Yeah, it's good. I don't deserve to drink. I lost my privileges. Um, and then you have to read 10 pages of nonfiction a day. You have to take a daily progress picture. And if you miss any of those things, you have to start back on day one. And
Oh
so
no.
yeah. So like I haven't missed anything. And my wife and I, there's been times when we've traveled. I've had to do walks at 11 p.m. at night. I've had to do things that I never would have done before. It's helped so much because on the weekends, we get lazy. And when you still have to do 2 workouts on the weekends, I take it easy. It's not terrible workouts. So yesterday I did a walk on the beach. I just jogged a mile and then walked the rest. And then I did a foam rolling workout, so it's 45 minutes. I'm sweating because of the pain of the
Yeah.
foam rolling, but it's nothing crazy. I just absolutely love it. So in line with that, my training has been for the past 6 weeks. I've been doing where I a week with my buddy Zach, really great guy here. He works at a place called Movement Therapy, and so it's a lot of movement stuff. We
Mhm.
do stuff with kettlebells. I'm really trying to get my knee flexion as good as possible. My plantar flexion on my ankles is terrible. Even my dorsiflexion is not great. My spine is all stuck together. I have issues with shoulder mobility, even though I've never had any back issues or shoulder issues, thank God. But I do have
That's
my right knee is reconstructed, and my left knee I have a torn meniscus still.
mhm.
I don't really feel pain in my left knee anymore because I stopped putting more than 400 pounds on my back for squat. That just went away right
Yeah,
after
that
that.
helps, right?
Helps a ton. And so my training now is like I'll do one workout a day outside, which is usually going to be because I'm jogging a mile a day every single day this year. So I haven't missed
Mhm.
way on that. I'm on like day, I don't know, 190, 200, whatever I'm on. And then I do one lift a day. Like today, I'm gonna go back in the afternoon, and it's gonna be. I'm doing a lot of. Have you seen any of knees over toes guy stuff?
I have heard about them, but I haven't like looked into them yet. It's one thing that I have to
Amazing.
put on my radar.
Yeah, I got a buddy who's out in New Zealand, and another friend who's in Australia who like got really involved with them, and we've been DMing, and they were like, "Man, you got to look at their stuff. Just look at it." And I just started looking at his stuff. I started watching his videos, and as someone who is a student of the game, and I like to support fellow coaches. I bought his monthly thing, so it's like
Oh, nice.
$50 a month. And I'm also learning so much because I've wanted to create an app for a while. So I'm probably going to make an app with my buddy Zach, the movement guy. Um, and you have things that I do a warm up every time, and usually specific to like if I'm doing an upper body day that's more focused on upper body, it'll be mostly upper body, opposite for lower body. But he always has in his app, he's got like his coach's notes, he's got the warm up, and he's got stretching at the end. So I'm doing a lot of that, and it's, things that I'm not as comfortable with, where I used to be, I'm in my comfort zone in the gym. Like I push
Yep.
myself and I know how to contract the crap out of my muscles, but now I'm doing things where it's like there's the metabolic component to it. There's the mobility that's just, it's killer. So I'm probably lifting, 5 days a week, once a day. And, the workout sessions are about an hour now,
Okay.
where before they used to be an hour and a half, but it's a lot of, functional stuff, and I'm loving it. I really want to see that progress, because, when you've been doing it, for me, it's been 26 years that I've been lifting consistently since I was 14 years old, and it's nice to get to a point where you have something new, where you have all this progress that you can make. And so I'm like a white belt again, I'm like a beginner when it comes to this stuff. So it's been cool to see that. And I think it's important for people to do that, is try to challenge themselves in different ways,
Yep. Completely agree. You can't be lying around in your comfort zone for all your life. It just gets boring. For me, it
Yeah,
just gets
exactly.
boring.
Totally
So,
agree.
have you, in this year or in the past year, let's say, because the last year was super slow, have you added any new biohacks or supplements or something or the other that you hadn't done all these years that you think have given you most bang for your buck? Something that you would like to share with the audience? Some of your new discoveries, even if it's like, even if there's no sign that will take it.
Oh, dude, I'm the same. Yeah, like I don't need studies. I'll do some studies myself. Yeah, no, I love it. My favorite obsession is with nootropics. So like I've
Okay,
done, in the last couple of years, it's been, I really like Phenibut. Have you ever tried Phenibut?
I haven't tried it.
Very, very good. It's also, it's like a GABA agonist, so
Yeah.
it helps with GABA. I would take it sometimes at night to relax, but then I've had times where I've experimented with taking Phenibut with aniracetam, and I talked to one of my buddies who had TBI. He was a special forces guy, and they breached the door, and they got like a staircase fell on his head, and so he's got all these brain injuries. So he's always the one who I talk to, because he's done so much with
Lived
nootropics.
it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and he was like, try Phenibut with aniracetam, and I called him the day that I did it. I was like, man, this is awesome. So lots of stuff with that. L-theanine. I take alpha GPC all the time. I got into peptides last year. I did ipamorelin with CJC. So that was the first time I don't want to say the first time I did peptides, because I was taking BPC 157 back in like 2013, 2014, because it was such a great for inflammation. Have you ever looked into that at all?
Yes, BP. I haven't used it. I have some peptides lying in my fridge downstairs, which I haven't got the time to use. One of them is a peptide to boost mitochondrial health. I can't remember the name right now.
Oh, I know the one you're
Um,
talking about. Is the one that you take like once or twice a year?
yes.
Yeah,
Well, it
Ben Green
mostly
Fields.
depends. Mostly it depends because you can take it. You can take it like before like competitions and things like that, or things when you're really wrecked. I have a copper peptide. I think it's GKHCU. So it's like a copper peptide. I have some intranasal peptides, but that's just for brain health and things like that. But I wanted to
What did you
do
put? What's in the
ipamorelin.
intranasal one?
I think it's N-acetyl C-max. Yeah,
Oh,
that's what it's
CMAX.
called.
Yeah. See, I haven't taken CMAX, so I wanted to look.
Acetyl C-max. So you can use it intranasally. It increases brain-derived neurotropic factor by like multiplied by hundreds. And yeah, they have some good studies on it, and it's easy because you can just sniff it. And if you're having a hard day, you haven't slept very well, it works really good for that. But I decided to do some of these growth hormone spiking peptides maybe next year. So we'll see how that
Man, I'll
goes.
tell you, everybody says testosterone is the best. I haven't tried it, so I can't comment on it.
Yeah.
But I will say the combination of ipamorelin and CJC is fantastic. Um, you have to have a little bit of this, because like for me,
Hmm.
like by the time nighttime comes, I'm on fire in the morning. By the time nighttime
Yeah.
comes, like my brain is turning off, and it was harder for me. The I think based on what I've learned, the best time to take it would be 2 hours after your last meal at night, because it's going to coincide better
Okay.
with your natural growth hormone pulses that you're going to get in the middle of the
Hmm.
night. So ipamorelin is a GHRP. It's a growth hormone releasing peptide. What that does is it amplifies the signal. So that's all that all peptides are. They're these amino acid chains that are giving some sort of signal, and that's why they're
Hmm.
better than taking like a hormone, which is going to automatically shut off your natural production. And there's actually studies that show that that enhanced signal can continue even after you come off of the peptide, which is really cool. It's like your body learned how long it would stay like that, and if it happens for everybody, I don't know. And then you pair that with CJC Nodac, which is and I think CJC would be better than CJC Nodac because CJC has a longer half life, but I didn't have that one. I worked through Tampa Tea here. My friend is the owner, and they had a compounding pharmacy that put them both together. And CJC Nodac is a GHRH, so it's a growth hormone releasing hormone. And what
Hmm.
that one does, you have ipamorelin here amplifying the growth hormone signal, and then you have CJC blocking somatotropin or somatostatin, which is like it's like your governor for growth hormone. So it's
Yeah.
clearing the path, and then it's giving you
It's
more. And
increasing the
so
signal. Yeah.
yeah, so those two together are fantastic. I have a buddy who's really into SARMs. I'm going to bring him into the on the podcast. I never ever wanted to touch those because I grew up in the 90s, and like I remember hearing stories about,
Yeah.
androstenedione and how like my estrogen was going to go up, and I was always terrified of that. And so my buddy's been trying to talk to me about some of these SARMs. To try. I have to do more research.
Well, keep us posted because
Yeah.
whatever comes out of your research, like I would really be interested in trying that as well.
Oh, I
But
have
I'll
tried.
let you do the experiment.
I have tried cardarine.
I haven't heard
Cardarine,
of
which
that
is
one.
GW 51
Oh
156 or
yes,
something.
yes, I've heard. Yeah,
It
GWB. Yeah,
increases endurance, and I did that actually getting ready for my half marathon because I was training with a guy at the time who was a hybrid athlete, and so he's big like me, and he did distance and strength, and he's like, man, for a guy like us, you're gonna see your engine is gonna go up, your cardio is gonna go up. Just thinking about it right now makes me want to go buy some more because I freaking loved it. It was really really good. Other than that, I did the last one I'll say that I would definitely recommend looking into is molecular hydrogen.
uh huh.
First, go to molecularhydrogenstudies.com. There's like 500 plus studies. I was taking a pill that I think I have a link on it on my profile. It works awesome, but I think I found something better. I just haven't tried it yet. We had someone on the podcast who has oxyhydrogen, so now you're inhaling it in an aerosol, and it's like even better than the pill because the first one was they would do the water, and
Hmm.
that one just it was okay, but it was because of the fact that it was in water, you weren't absorbing as much of it, and the effects weren't as prolonged. Now with this, it's interacting. The hydrogen is being released by the minute it touches my tongue all the way until it goes down into my gut, and that increases recovery. It improves performance for a lot of people, and so that's what I want to do next. I think we're gonna buy a machine and do that and experiment with that. It's like $1,600, so
Yeah,
I gotta justify that to the wife.
yeah, yeah. You have to bring in all the benefits. And I've actually been a fan of molecular hydrogen for a while. And as we speak, I'm in the back ends of forming a biohacking company. Well, basically,
Mm.
it's just gonna. And one of the products that we will bring to the market is a molecular hydrogen generator. So it's
Oh,
going to be. I
awesome!
I think don't have it right now. It might be downstairs, but basically, it's it's a small generator and it's able to have 1000 up 1500 parts per billion of hydrogen, which is almost at the saturation level of hydrogen in the water.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's just like a small button. You press that in, put the water, and you know about all the benefits. So
It
we don't need
structures
to
the
talk
body's
about that.
water. Yeah.
It's perfect. So we've come almost, wow, time's passed by so fast. We've almost come to the end of this broadcast. And my final closing question to you would be, if you had a time machine, and like you mentioned to that 17-year-old guy, if you could go back in, let's say, your 20s or 30s, And if you give yourself like one or two pieces of advice, what would that be? Knowing all that you know right now. And I mean, you can advise yourself to buy Bitcoin, but like, I'd appreciate something else.
Yeah, I look. I think no, nothing against people investing in crypto, especially the ones who bought it a few years back when it was like 3,000, or
Mhm.
even earlier than that when it was less. Hey, more
Yeah,
power to you.
500.
I just Yeah, can you imagine? I personally, I prefer like precious metals,
Mhm.
even silver. You know, even some of these other metals that people don't consider. I like things with intrinsic value. But no, I won't go into like the Back to the Future time machine thing.
Mhm.
That's a cop out, like you said. Um,
Yeah.
so I would say definitely. Um, when I graduated from University of Florida in '96, if I would have gotten on YouTube back then, and if I would have
Mhm.
decided back then, to really just dive into this and do really what brought me, like, applying my passion to life, because your passion is not what you do, your passion is what you bring to life, so living your passion, it doesn't make much sense to me. Living your purpose does, because you put passion into your purpose. And so I know back then I was single, I didn't have anything to lose, I could have built something really huge by now. um, and I'll try to pretend that I won't copy any of the companies that came out in the last 10 years and make
Yeah.
release them first. That would have been hard to do, and be like, man, so this is a really cool company. Like Mark Bell, the way he came up with the slingshot, that story is
Mhm.
freaking amazing. But and then he was able to buy his parents a house right next door to him. He bought his brother a car. I mean, he's the meathead millionaire. So like, there's lots of cool things. But if I would have just been the Danny Vega brand back then,
Mhm.
I remember I got out of grad school, and I went straight to VCU. And then when I came back home from VCU after a year and a half, because I wanted to chase money, I could have just said, cut it off right there. And instead of, I was training people to make money as I searched for a pharmaceutical job, and then I got into pharmaceuticals for 3 years, and then I got into medical device for 10 years, and I made a ton of money. But like, I would have loved to be a business owner back when I was 26 years old, 14 years ago. I would have even more contacts. I would have been able to network the way I've been networking the past, 4 years, so much more, and I would have been fulfilled. But it's hard to get in with those things, because then, like, what if I didn't meet my wife, and then I don't have my kids? And it's like, it's
Yeah.
hard to say. I don't want to change anything, because I want to have the life that I have. But if I could keep everything else, like my wife and my boys, then I would have said, quit your job back then. This
Follow
whole,
your passion.
yeah, it's so hard for so many people, because they really truly believe that their job is safe, and it's not.
Mhm.
Your job is not safe. You think it is, because you get a biweekly paycheck, and you get a 401k, and you get, insurance, and it's they will treat you like a number right away. I've experienced it myself. I'm on the Hall of
Yep.
Fame in my home office in New Jersey of my company, and the next year after that, I was on the chopping block, and I didn't get cut, but I still, like, they treated me like I was going to get cut. So
And
things
I
can
think
change
one
pretty
thing that
quickly.
we have learned in 2019 and 2020 is like the whole world now knows that, you know, it's not, nothing is guaranteed and always going to be the same. Just like cycles of life, everything will keep on moving up and down and round and round. But if you're working for some company, chances are like you are treated as a number.
Yeah,
So
and I like
thank
that
you.
you said that, the cycle thing, because life is a cycle, and don't come to conclusions, because you don't know how the story ends. So stop coming to conclusions, because this could be the beginning of an amazing story. You just have to have patience. I can tell you, I don't know how it is in Dubai, but people talk a lot of crap about this country, and I can talk a lot of crap about USA. I can, but then
Mhm.
at the same time, in my experience, what I can see is, like, anybody that applies themselves to something for 3 years will make a lot of money, and
Mhm.
that's a pretty good, cool thing to know. Is that if you can just get over your fear for like 3 years, you're gonna be just fine in 3 years if you stick to it and you apply yourself and you stay focused.
And like you mentioned, one of the biggest factors is patience. One of the other two factors that, in my opinion, are important is your willingness to step into the unknown. Because most of the time,
Yeah.
we just want to step into the known where the light is, but if you take that step when there is no light, chances are that you're not going to fall. You're just going to walk straight to your destination. And the other thing that I see a lot of people failing doing is persistence. I think
Yeah.
globally we are in a culture that we try for some time and then just quit, or because of course back in the day there were not many options, so you had to stick with what you did. But nowadays, just because everything is so easy and online and everything has so many options, whether it comes to people, I wouldn't say jobs, but like just opportunities. So
Yeah.
people spend a fine or finite amount of energy, whether it's relationships, whether it's building a business or things. And when they have some backfalls, they aren't persistent enough to push through that.
Yeah.
And as the story goes, if you're persistent enough, you will see the goal is 2
Yeah.
years from you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd
100%,
like to
man.
say as well. Cool. Thank
Yeah,
you
I totally
so
agree.
much for today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate all the great work that you've been doing, all the content that you've been putting. I have learned so many things from you on the podcast today. It's been my pleasure to have you. And for anyone who wants to find you, what's the best way to people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, Instagram is where I'm the most active. So Instagram is at dannyvega.ms, DANNYVEGA.ms. And then our website is fatfueled.family. So the Fat Fueled Family podcast is there, coaching, consults, our blog, everything's on there.
Awesome, awesome. And for anyone of you who didn't catch that, don't worry. It's in my stories. It's going to be on my post, and you can get in touch with Danny from there. And this is me, CJ Podcast. Everyone, have a great day ahead of you.
Thanks.